Hi, everybody. Dr. Nick here. I just finished recording another engaging episode of the Hospitality Spirit podcast. My guest on this episode was Tayler Cross. Taylor's a graduate of DePaul University, born and raised in Chicago. She's currently the HR manager for ASM Global. During our conversation, we covered a wide variety of issues, including Taylor's transition from hotel operations to human resources, suggestions for individuals looking for career opportunities in hospitality and tourism or HR, and some advice for things that you can do from a professional development standpoint. I hope you enjoy this episode. Good morning, everybody. Dr. Nicholas Thomas here with DePaul University School of Hospitality Leadership with another great episode of the Hospitality Spirit podcast coming at you. Today, I am joined by Tayler Cross. Tayler is a graduate of DePaul University. She's a Chicago native. She is currently the HR manager for ASM Global, overseeing Soldier Field, McFetridge Sports Complex, Gately Park, Morgan Park Sports Center, and Addams Rec Center. Tayler, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me.
So Tayler, where I kind of like to start with all podcast guests is just laying the foundation. What does the HR manager do at ASM Global, and what is ASM Global?
Yeah, of course. So I'll start with ASM Global. They are a stadium and convention center management company. My home office is out of Soldier Field, but I don't have anything to do with the Bears. I have to make that very clear here in Chicago. So they manage convention centers, arenas, and stadiums all over the world. They have over 300 properties now that they oversee. My role is the HR manager. I've been there for about a month now, and it's anything from employee complaints, payroll, benefits, and any of the fun things, employee engagement, parties, community service events, you name it. Everything on the HR side is my responsibility.
So I think that's probably a really interesting misconception that some people have. I mean, here in Chicago, people would assume that the Bears are responsible for managing Soldier Field and all of the concessions and everything associated with it and the day-to-day maintenance of the facility. Same thing with Wrigley Field, same thing with the stadium that the Sox play in. What is that something that's unique to Chicago here, or is that something that we see nationwide or even globally, that you have a separate company, not the sports team, managing the actual venue?
That's something that you're going to see all over the world. So the Chicago Park District actually owns Soldier Field because it's not only a stadium, it's also a park. They do walks outside. They manage the museum campus, or the Park District owns the museum campus area. So then the Bears and the Fire, they are tenants of Soldier Field. So they technically lease their time for their sporting events from Soldier Field. And then that's where we come in, where we manage the maintenance, the grounds, the sales and events team. We don't oversee the catering. So all of the concessions are through a third party. So I only have about 30 full-time employees at Soldier Field.
What other kind of events besides sports do you see at Soldier Field? I mean, I as someone who actually lives, I can, when I'm walking my dog, I can hear the PA announcer at Soldier Field. So you always know it's a game day or they're preparing for one. But what other sorts of events do you see at at Soldier Field that would be kind of typical in a calendar year? Not
Sure.
In a COVID year, but in a normal year.
Right. So there's 365 days a year. Soldier Field, we like to host over 400 events a year. So more than one a day. So that's anything from a lunch and learn, and company might rent out one of the concourse levels for lunch and learn. We have meeting spaces. We do weddings, of all things. They do drive-in movies. That's something that's been really popular now. We have drive-in concerts, walks, the games, the practices for all of the sports teams. And then they bring in college football teams, rugby teams. They do tours almost weekly, on a weekly basis, of the facility as well.
This is the point where I'm going to give a plug for the rugby tournaments. I've gone to a couple of rugby matches at Soldier Field. It is an unbelievable venue to watch rugby in. So if you get a chance, if you see some tickets go on sale for a rugby match, jump at it, because it's a really fun activity to go to.
All right.
What So I think that's interesting. I think a lot of people think, okay, someone's only going to use Soldier Field if they're going to actually be down on the field. But in reality, you've got some really nice luxury suites where someone, even if in the wintertime when the weather's inclement, people can just stay inside and it's almost just like a meeting and event space that someone would see in a hotel or a similar facility, correct?
Absolutely. They have a beautiful backdrop of the lake, and then rest of museum campus.
So when you look at the various venues, I mean, how much of your time is allocated to just Soldier Field versus the other venues within ASM Global?
So with the properties that I oversee, there's 5 of them total. Well, 6 total, but one's a baseball field, so I don't have to do anything. But I would say my time's pretty evenly split between the 5 properties. There's a lot of part-time employees at the rec centers that they're college kids. They're teaching hockey, figure skating, gymnastics. So I do spend a lot of time there just interacting with our part-time staff to really make them feel that they're cared for in these positions. And they're not just a summer job, but it's a great way, to learn how to be in a work environment, how to build up your resume, and how to network with people that you're interested in and, areas that you're interested in.
That's really cool. So you've been with ASM for about a month, and prior to that, you were with Hyatt. So this was one of the really interesting things, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is that you, like me, started off in hotel operations and then you transitioned to human resources. What was it like working with Hyatt? You were with Hyatt for more than 6 years in both hotel operations and Hyatt, but what was that experience like coming right out of DePaul, going to work for Hyatt?
So I actually worked at Hyatt when I was still in school. I wrote a lot of my papers when I was working in housekeeping in the late night hours. But, working for Hyatt was one of the best experiences I've ever had. Unfortunately, because of COVID, there was a lot of reduction in the workforce, and, my position was not exempt from that.
Mm-hmm.
But working in operations, I really wanted to get my hands dirty and see what makes the guest experience what it is. I started at the front desk. I really loved interacting with the guests on a daily basis, but then I wanted to see the back of the house side,
Mm-hmm.
and, the unsung heroes, if you will. So I decided to go down to housekeeping and see how the nucleus of the hotel worked. And that was a really, really great opportunity. Having 150 ladies that bring you food all the time and treat you like, they're their daughters is just great.
Mm-hmm.
And having that experience, I really wanted to transition it to an entire hotel. My thought was that if I could get the biggest department in the hotel on my side, I should be able to do it with the whole hotel. So that was where my transition to HR came from.
That's interesting. So you mentioned that while you were at DePaul going to school that you worked, and this is a common theme. Some might call it a broken record that I just keep hitting home to students, that work experience does not replace education and education doesn't replace work experience, that you got to have both. And you made the decision to work while you were going to school. Talk a little bit about that decision and why you thought that was important.
Sure. So I started DePaul my junior year. So I went to school on a volleyball scholarship for my freshman and sophomore year. I decided that I wanted to do something other than sports. I wanted to go to school for school rather than go to school for volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at what I wanted to do, I decided that hospitality was something that I was interested in. I thought it was great. I loved going to hotels as a kid, and I just wanted to give it a shot. So I looked at DePaul's hospitality school, and it really seemed to fit what I was looking for. I was able to commute. I never lived on campus either.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting married my junior year. But DePaul had a really great work-life balance that I was looking for, school-life balance, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to work. I wanted to be able to apply what I was learning at work to school and vice versa. One of my favorite classes I took at DePaul was a mock hotel with Dr. Meyer.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the best experiences I ever had. My second
The Blue
favorite,
Demon Hotel.
I'm sorry?
The Blue Demon Hotel.
Yes, absolutely. It was actually the first time I ever had to fire somebody. So who knew I was ready for HR from then? But that was one of, my favorite classes. It gave us a good look at, even though it was just on paper, but what goes into creating a hotel. And that was something that was really a great opportunity and experience for me too.
What else, when you look back at your time at DePaul and you reflect on it, what other sorts of things really stick in your mind as might not have at that moment seemed like a really impactful thing, but now you reflect back and you're like, yeah, that was really important to get involved, whether it was student clubs or study abroad or the mentor program or whatever it might be. Were there other things at DePaul that you kind of take away now and you're like, this really helped my professional development?
One of my favorite things, one of my favorite classes, I would say that I loved, and I hope you still do it. I think it was actually one of your classes. It was a Tuesday, Thursday class, and we had to go to different hotels. You gave us different hotels that we just had to show up at and try to get a tour of.
Mm.
And that really pushed me outside of my comfort zone. I didn't really participate in any of the clubs, unfortunately. Looking back, I do regret that. So I will say that people do need to get involved. There's a lot that DePaul does offer, but just getting us out there to go to a hotel and ask them to take a look around or show us the room was really hard for me and just my comfort zone. And that still sticks in my mind. And that's what one of the things that stands out to me the most that made me grow. And then also going to the career fair was something that was really difficult for me. I was really nervous when I was in college, and I couldn't go up and just start talking to somebody about what I wanted to do.
Sure.
And that career fair was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but one of the best things at the same time.
That's great to hear. It's great to hear that you found value in that. And for the listeners, that was not a plug that was planted. That was a completely unsolicited endorsement of my courses. So thank you for saying that as a teacher. That always makes me feel good. And it's interesting to your point about, nervous to go up and engage. And, one of the reasons that I do assignments like that, and one of the reasons that we do the career fair is really to give students a safe environment to make that first leap, because that ability to go up and just talk to somebody kind of cold, if you will, is a skill that you're going to need throughout your career. And when I was a hospitality student, I'm extremely introverted. I know that some people might find that kind of odd that a teacher is a natural introvert, but I am incredibly shy around people that I don't know. And it was kind of like learning to swim. Like, you just got to do it. You just got to jump in the pool and just start paddling, and you will swim. And it just becomes easier over time. It takes practice. And even from the HR standpoint, that, listen, the first time you had to fire somebody or the first time you had to give somebody a really difficult performance evaluation, it's not easy. And it just gets better over time with repetition and practice.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And going to the career fair, I still remember the gentleman that I talked to the first time. And I just remember thinking, I blew it. That was the worst thing I've ever done in my entire life. But as I kept going up to more tables, I felt better after each table I went to. And by the end of the day, I felt great. And it really helped me find Hyatt is really what it did. They were wonderful at their career fair. They were super welcoming. And I just remember thinking that this company makes me feel like I'm at home, and this is where I want to work.
It's interesting because I can guarantee you that there's some people listening to this that are recruiters for different organizations, be it in the restaurant industry or hotels. Maybe expand a little bit about what some of the things that they did, or what really gave you that impression that they were welcoming. And was it the marketing collateral? Was it the individual that was there at the fair? Was it the easy to access website or mission statement that matched with you? What can you kind of remember? What were some of the things that stick out in your mind?
I do. And I remember that the first gentleman I talked to was probably the same age as my dad. So I was just nervous talking to a quote unquote grown up when you're in college. But then going to the Hyatt table, the women that were there, I felt like they were the same age as me.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like they really knew where I was coming from. And I thought it was just so wonderful that these people were my peers. I felt like they were my peers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that if there's a company that promotes within and a company that has people that are just like me, like this is where I'm going to fit in. And that's really what made me feel the best, was that there was somebody there that I felt that got me.
Yeah, and really, it sometimes you kind of have that warm feeling almost instantly. Sometimes it happens within 5 or 10 seconds that you just say, you know what, we're clicking. And but the opposite is also true. That a lot of times we'll see students go to a career fair, and the most recent career fair we had 100 different companies, and the reality of it is that there's going to be companies that you're maybe not a good fit for in terms of what you know what you're looking for in an organizational culture and when that company offers, and that's totally okay. And a lot of times those career fairs aren't necessarily not necessarily designed for you to say this is the company I want to work for, but sometimes it's also really useful to say this is not a company I want to work for. That it's a two-way street, that you're interviewing that company as much as they're interviewing you in that career fair environment.
Yeah, you just took the words right out of my mouth.
Mhm.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's the time to test the waters against, what you want versus what they're offering. And it's okay to say no. It really is. If you're not going to be happy long term with the company, you don't want to waste your time and you don't want to waste their time as well.
I completely agree with that. And it's somebody, I'll often get somebody will call me up and say, I've got this job opportunity. They're a current student or a recent graduate, and they'll say, I've got this job opportunity. I'm not sure if I should take it. And that lesson of that very lesson early on in your career of it's okay to turn down a job offer is sometimes a very weird feeling for people to have, that they like, well, they really liked me and they really want me to come work there. But if you're not going to be happy, that will exponentially increase every week and every month that you're with an organization. That you might go in and let's say you're 95% into it. Well, after the first month, that might only be down to 90. And after 2 months, it might only be, you're only 75% into this job. You got to know, it's not to say that you can't leave an organization and you can't transition to do other things in this industry. It's just, if you're going to accept a job, it's a commitment, and you got to make sure that it's the right decision for you. Not every job is the best fit, and not every company is the best fit for you.
It's true. And, I lost my position with Hyatt in the middle of June. And I started with ASM in the middle of August. So it was a good 2 months that I was unemployed. And during that time, I think I applied for over 40 different positions. I had probably close to 20 phone screens and another dozen interviews. And there are some of them that after the initial phone screen, I sent an email to the recruiter afterwards and said, thank you so much for your time, but unfortunately, I don't feel this position's right for me.
Mm-hmm.
Not telling them necessarily what it was unless they were asking, but just it didn't feel right. I didn't, my personal values didn't align with their workplace values. And I don't want to give up part of myself to fit in with an organization. I want to be able to bring my whole self to work when I go. And eventually it led me to ASM, and it's a great fit. I've been there for, like I said, about a month, and already it feels like a family, even though we haven't even been in the same office together yet.
That's wonderful.
Just being able to do Zoom and see everybody and really know who they are has just been absolutely wonderful. And it's the right decision that I made for myself and for my family.
It's really interesting you say that. And I kind of realized that kind of during this whole COVID and us working virtually, there's going to be a time, when we get a vaccine or we all start going back face to face, there's going to be a lot of meeting your coworkers face to face for the very first time. I mean, what an exciting time that's going to be, when you say, "Oh my gosh, we talk every day, but we've never met face to face." Gosh, that's going to be such an exciting and probably pretty emotional time for a lot of people.
I really think so. And I just am going to want to hug everybody, but
Mhm.
I probably won't. But I will want to because I spend hours talking to them or Zooming with them. Just finally getting to know the person is just going to be a really great experience.
That's so exciting. So I'm curious, what's some advice that you have for individuals right now that are maybe on the job market, that they're out there looking for an opportunity. Perhaps they're a recent graduate, perhaps they're still in school, perhaps they've been let go from their organization due to workforce restructuring. What are some kind of key things that you're telling people now if they're actively looking, since you were kind of there a couple months ago?
One of the things that I discovered was you definitely want to look for quality over quantity when it comes to your applications. There's so many quick apply or easy apply positions on LinkedIn or Indeed, and you're just throwing your resume out there and just seeing what's going to catch. Um, I know this might sound crazy, but I feel like a lot of times the recruiters can feel that the effort or the energy that's put in behind an application. So if it's just kind of a half done application, you're not really putting a lot of thought into it. The recruiters can feel that when they're looking at it on your side. So find the companies that you want to work for and search out those positions. Don't
Mm,
just search by a position that you want to be an HR manager, you want to be a housekeeping manager, so you're only searching for open jobs with them. Think about the companies that you want to work for and find the positions with that company because that's going to make your job search better. And a lot of times companies are um, not posting on job boards. So you have to research the company and find those jobs for yourself.
mhm, mhm. What advice would you give people about their kind of digital brand? I mean, is LinkedIn, is that going to be the best mechanism right now that people should be investing a lot of time and resources into getting their LinkedIn profile up and running? Are there other ways or other places that they could go to look for opportunities and create a profile, if you will? What are your thoughts on that?
So if you look at some of these positions that are posted on LinkedIn, there's over 300 applicants that have applied for them because they're easy apply positions. I do suggest having an up to date LinkedIn profile, but not necessarily using it all the time. Like I said, finding the companies that you want to work for, I think, is really your best bet. The other website that I have found to be pretty good is the Illinois Job Links job board. It's not
Mhm.
something that a lot of people know about. Um, when you're on unemployment, it's part of the unemployment website, and a lot of companies have to post to them, even if they're not posting to any other job boards. They still have to post to that one, so they
Interesting.
have a lot more positions out there. And I actually found this position through that Illinois Job Links
Now, do you
job.
have to be a resident of Illinois to participate in that, or can people that are maybe in Indiana listening to this, or up in Wisconsin that could easily get into the state of Illinois through commuting? Do they have access to that as well?
They do. It doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with unemployment. It's
Mhm.
just an addition to the unemployment
Sure.
website for Illinois, but there's a separate login for that as well.
That's great. That's great. So I want to jump back to your time with Hyatt. So there was a point, and I had this point as well, and I've talked about it on other podcasts, that you decided that hotel operations, you learned a lot. You were down in the trenches, scrubbing toilets and dealing with angry guests. That you decided that maybe you wanted to go over to human resources. What was that transition like for you, and what was the draw to go into human resources?
So the transition was great. I think for about a month, I was doing part time in each department until I was finally ready to move over. Um, but the draw was that I loved being there for the guest. And I always found that I was getting attached to these guests that were coming in and out all of the time. And I really wanted to be there for the people I work with every single day on a customer service side.
Mhm.
Human resources is just as much customer service as the front desk.
The
You
internal customer. I mean, the
it
employee
is.
is the guest. It's just an internal guest that I think a lot of people confuse that. They're like, oh, the customer is always right, the external customer. And I said, no, you kind of have two customers. You've got the employees and you've got the guest.
Right. And that's really why I wanted to go to that side. I wanted to be there for the good, the bad, and the ugly. You spend more time with these people a week than you do with your own family a lot of the time. And I wanted to be there for them. Whether it's they're sending off their kid to college and they want to get a hotel in whatever state that they're going to. Or unfortunately, if they have a bad diagnosis and they need to go on a leave of absence, I wanted to be there. I wanted to be that friendly face and that person that they could rely on. And that's really why I wanted to go to HR, was because I wanted to be there for all of these people in the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a perfect place for me. And I love it. I do miss the operations. I do miss the craziness of it every once in a while. But a lot of the times with these hotels or even with ASM, you still have that option to get to the front side of everything and help out with the big events, which you get your taste and then you're ready to go back to your office.
Well, and I still miss the working in the hospitality industry all the time. I mean, it's, there were some crazy times being in an oversold situation and having to tell that guest, sorry, we just don't have a room for you, or, wildlife making their way into your hotel lobby and chasing them around to try to shoo them out the back door. So I kind of miss those, and I miss a lot of the friendships that I formed over time. So that's not unusual for you to miss hotel operations. It's the heartbeat of a hotel in many cases. What is there a specific area of human resources that you want to go into, or that you're in human resources now, but that's really of interest to you? So recruitment and selection, labor relations, training and development, compensation, or are you kind of just looking at HR as a holistic pie?
I honestly have been very lucky, I think, with my HR career, that every area that I've been in, I have fallen in love with.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's not necessarily the norm. A lot of people say, I hate numbers. I don't want to touch benefits or compensation, or they don't want to touch recruiting. But I started as an HR coordinator, and I was doing the employee relations. So the big parties, the community engagement, movie tickets, just, small things. And I loved that part of it. I loved helping it and being the face of HR. And then I moved into hiring, and I loved being able to be the place that people could come to if they're looking for a job. I liked being able to offer the job. And then I moved into benefits and workers' compensation and risk management. And I loved that. I also took your risk management class, and it was great. But I really
fun class. I remember that class. That was you learned about all kinds of things that you didn't think that you would need to know about, but
you never did. And that I took before I was actually doing workers' comp and risk management in the hotel. And a lot of it did relate. So I'll let you know that. But I really liked being a workers' comp. I felt like a doctor one day. I felt like a lawyer another day, but I liked being there. And then I moved into the HR manager, which was training and compliance. And that was something that, I really liked. Originally, I went to school to be a teacher. So I liked the training side of everything. Mm-hmm. And then I moved to the assistant director of human resources, where I had more of an overarching role with a focus in labor relations. And I loved labor relations too. I was fortunate enough to be be selected to be at the negotiating table for Hyatt when they renegotiated their labor contract with Local 1 in 2018. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I really, really liked too. Mm-hmm. So I sound like a broken record, but there's so many things that I really, really enjoyed with HR that everything I've been able to do, I've really fallen in love with, which I think just really makes me a great HR manager, because I don't feel like any part of it is tedious.
Sure. I think that's really interesting about HR because, depending on the size of the organization, all those different respective areas, compensation, labor relations, training development, that might fall on a very limited number of people. Or you might go to work for an organization that has entire departments focused on training and development, and entire departments focused on compensation and compensation analysis. And so there really is so many different avenues that you can go to. Just like if you went into hotel operations, you could spend a little bit of time at the front desk, a little bit of time in room res, little bit of time in sales, a little bit of time in housekeeping, a little bit of time in front services. HR is the exact same way. And I think it doesn't necessarily pop up on people's radar that, listen, every organization is going to have some sort of human resources function that you can go into so many different segments. I mean, your scenario is a perfect example. You initially started with Hyatt, did HR with Hyatt, and now you go to ASM Global and you're doing HR. There's so much overlap, and there gives you an opportunity to really go anywhere in the U.S. Yes, individual states might have different labor laws, and different companies might have different approaches to their strategic human resources, but HR is such a universally applicable area of focus in a degree and
It
work
is.
experience.
And everything that I did at Hyatt, I spent anywhere from 9 months to a year in each of those positions, really perfecting them. Um, those are my sole focus. Now I do all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I do a little bit of everything that I did at Hyatt. So really those 6 years of experience that I have in HR really prepared me prepared me really well for this position here.
It's interesting that you said that you started off training to be a teacher. You went into hotel operations, then went to HR, and you kind of found your love. And my path was somewhat similar. That I started in hotel operations, went to HR, found myself in training and development, and that's what actually was the springboard for me to become a teacher. That if you had asked me when I graduated from hotel school that, is there any chance that you're going to be a college professor? And I just said, absolutely not. Like, I want to be GM of a hotel. Like, that's my jam. Like, I'm going to go work at a resort and it's going to be awesome. And here I am later down the line in higher education, and I've found the thing that I love to do. So HR is kind of the catalyst for that for many people, that it helps you learn who you are. It helps you learn what your skills are, and being able to interact with people well, which HR really gets you, enables you to do, is such a universal skill. That ability to show empathy, that ability to critically think through problems, that ability to look in an organization and realize the value of the people within it, incredibly useful in your career.
It is. And it's a lot of that stuff is not things that can be taught either. Um, and that's one of the biggest parts of being in HR is just finding the right people to
Mhm.
match your company.
Well, it
Um,
goes
and it,
goes
yeah,
back to work experience doesn't replace education, and education doesn't replace work experience.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taylor, as we kind of wrap up here, I would love for you, sitting in your role as you're well into your career, outside, after you graduated from DePaul, you found something that you love to do. What sort of parting advice would you give for someone that's listening right now that is maybe just getting ready to graduate, or is going to be graduating the next year, or they're out in the job market right now just to maintain their professional development, to stay sharp? Is it certifications? Is it joining associations? Is it finding a mentor? What kind of things would you recommend to those listeners?
All of it. Um,
All of the above.
all of the above. I think networking is something that I didn't personally take advantage of when I was in college, and I think it's something that I've always regretted. It was something that I felt like I was always behind the eight ball on as I was starting my career. So if you can master that skill of networking in college, you already have a huge leg up on a lot of people. But joining those associations is going to give you those skills, those networking skills that you really need.
So, from
Any
an
of
HR standpoint, is it SHRM? I mean, what sort of associations are you involved in from an HR standpoint?
Yeah, SHRM is one of them. I would say even any other young professionals. It doesn't necessarily have to be one.
Hmm.
I have an aunt that has ALS, and she does a lot with the Les Turner's Foundation.
Hmm.
But they have a young professionals for the Les Turner Foundation. So just getting involved in associations or something that interests you for young professionals, it gives you a really great or a broad perspective of different areas outside of your own interest, but it exposes you to that. And like, it goes back to the networking. It gives you those networking skills. It builds up your resume with things that you're interested in. But then as far as if you're looking for something in your realm. So for HR, getting the HR certification, whether it's a SHRM or your PHR, taking that test is really something that's going to help. A lot of these positions now are requiring that you have some sort of certification.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I hate to see it, but a lot of even entry level positions, they want something just to know that you know the basic laws and rules that go around it. Is something that's really, really important.
And it's finding something that you're passionate about. I mean, I love that point that it doesn't necessarily have to be hospitality and tourism related. So, um, like you, I have a family member that suffered from ALS, and that's a passion of mine as well. So, but getting involved and volunteering in those sorts of things will help build a lot of the same skills that are going to be useful in your hospitality and tourism industry career. Critically thinking through problems, communication skills, and finding a mentor out there and helping create that work-life balance for you, because it's not all about work, work, work every day. I know that's difficult to envision in the era that we're living in now. It seems like we're on Zoom calls 24/7, but the reality is you have to find a work-life balance in what you do.
Absolutely. And you want to be able to enjoy life outside of your work too. And if there are organizations that, kind of help both sides of it, that's a huge plus.
That's great. Tayler Cross, you are a graduate of DePaul University. You're from Chicago, and you're currently the HR manager for ASM Global. I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.